Buckle up, everybody. We're launching into a deep dive on China's space program today.
Ambitious program.
It is. And to help guide us, we have this fascinating article from the BBC about the recent launch of Shenzhou 19, their latest crewed mission to their Tiangong space station. And what's so cool about this article is...
It's quite the story.
Yeah, it has like a mix of like on-the-ground reporting from the actual launch site.
Oh, wow.
Quotes from Chinese space officials, and then also some really insightful commentary from international experts. So
Very well-rounded.
yeah. So what we're going to do today is go kind of beyond just, the nuts and bolts of rockets and spaceships, right? We're going to really try to understand what's driving China's space ambitions.
The motivations behind it all.
Exactly. And, what are the implications for the rest of the world? I mean, are we looking at like a new space race here?
A very real possibility.
Okay, so let's start with that Shenzhou 19 launch.
Okay.
The article paints this really vivid picture, right? You're in the Gobi Desert at the Jiuquan Launch Center.
It's quite a stark landscape, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's like this vast emptiness. And then suddenly you have this incredible display of technological power.
That juxtaposition is fascinating, right?
Yeah, and the BBC reporter talks about like crowds of people lining the streets, this palpable sense of national pride.
Which makes sense. They're sending their youngest crew ever into space.
Yeah, including their first female space engineer, Wang.
That's a historic moment right there.
Right. It sends a really powerful message about this new generation of Chinese space explorers.
Definitely. And it also highlights how serious China is about achieving its space goals.
And what exactly are those goals?
Well, their stated ambitions are pretty clear. They want to build a permanent space station on the moon by 2030.
Wow.
And then eventually venture even further.
So they're playing the long game here.
Oh, absolutely. And this is all tied into President Xi Jinping's vision of China as a global superpower.
Right. He's called space exploration a critical part of China's great rejuvenation.
Exactly. It's not just about scientific advancement. It's about reclaiming a sense of historical greatness.
Like a return to the days when China led the world in innovation.
Precisely. Think about their ancient dynasties. They were pioneers in astronomy and mathematics engineering.
They had incredible inventions.
Exactly. And they see this space program as a continuation of that legacy.
So it's a way of projecting their power and influence on a global scale.
I think that's a fair assessment.
And they're backing it up with some pretty impressive achievements.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, retrieving samples from the far side of the moon, that's a huge accomplishment.
Technically, it's incredibly challenging. That side of the moon is always facing away from Earth.
So communication is really difficult.
Right. It takes incredible precision and sophisticated technology to pull that off.
And it definitely got the attention of the U.S.
Oh, yeah. The BBC article talks about how NASA chief Bill Nelson has even said that the U.S. and China are in a race to return to the moon.
A race to the moon? It sounds like something out of the Cold War.
It does have that feel, doesn't it? But the stakes are even higher now.
Because it's not just about bragging rights anymore.
Right. Now there's the potential for claiming lunar territory.
And all those valuable resources.
Exactly. Things like rare earth elements, helium-3 for fusion energy, even water ice for a lunar base.
It's like a whole new frontier opening up.
And it's got everyone a little bit nervous.
Yeah. I mean, the article even quotes Elon Musk, right? He acknowledges China's capabilities, but he's worried about the potential for weaponization.
And the head of U.S. Space Command has voiced similar concerns about China's growing network of satellites.
So there's this tension, right, between China's talk of peaceful exploration and these anxieties about their military ambitions.
A very real tension. And it makes understanding China's perspective even more crucial.
So what is their perspective?
Well, they frame it as a win-win. They say their space program will benefit all of humanity.
But it's also clearly about advancing their own national interests.
Of course. But it's important to recognize that those two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
So it's a complex picture.
Very complex, and we're just starting to scratch the surface here.
It feels like there are so many layers to this story.
Scientific, economic, political, cultural.
They're all intertwined.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's playing out against this backdrop of rapid technological advancement.
Like their use of AI in space exploration.
Right. They're using AI to analyze data, navigate challenging environments, and make new discoveries.
It's mind-blowing how fast things are moving.
It is, and it raises a lot of questions about the future.
Yeah, like what are the consequences of all this?
Yeah.
What does it mean for space exploration and for us here on Earth?
Big questions that we'll definitely need to unpack.
But before we get to those, let's dive into some of the specific benefits China claims to be pursuing through its space program.
Okay, What are they hoping to achieve for humanity?
Let's explore that next.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the potential risks and these rivalries, right, heating up this new space race.
Yeah.
But what about the good stuff? Like, what are the potential benefits? What's the upside?
Well, from China's perspective, it's not just about national prestige or economic dominance. I think they genuinely believe their space program can benefit humanity.
Okay, I'm listening. What kind of benefits?
Well, one area they're really focused on is medical research.
Ugh.
They're saying the unique environment of microgravity, it provides opportunities to study human physiology in ways that we just can't here on Earth.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've heard about the studies on bone and muscle loss in astronauts.
Yeah.
Right? Which could lead to new treatments for osteoporosis.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're doing research on the International Space Station, and they've had promising results in things like tissue regeneration and protein crystallization,
Wow.
which could, revolutionize drug development.
So even if we forget about the competition for a minute and, the geopolitical tensions, there's a real potential for, scientific advancements that could actually improve our lives.
Absolutely. I think that's something we need to keep in mind amidst all this talk about lunar gold rushes and military posturing.
Speaking of lunar gold rushes, let's go back to the economic potential of the moon for a second. I'm still trying to grasp this whole idea of lunar mining. Is it really feasible, or is it just like a sci-fi fantasy?
It's honestly a bit of both. The technology is still pretty early, and the costs are astronomical.
Pun intended.
Exactly. But that potential payoff is so huge that it's attracting serious investment, from both governments and private companies.
That's like those old gold rush stories.
Yeah.
People are willing to risk everything for a chance to strike it rich.
Yeah, exactly. And just like those gold rushes, there's a real danger that the pursuit of profit could overshadow ethical considerations and environmental concerns.
That's a good point. We're talking about potentially messing with a pristine celestial body, right? A place that's been untouched for billions of years. What kind of impact did that have?
Well, scientists and policymakers are really grappling with that question right now. There's a lot of concern about potential contamination, right? The destruction of scientifically valuable sites, and then there's the potential for conflict over resources.
So it's a minefield, literally and figuratively. So how do we navigate this ethically? How do we make sure that this pursuit of resources on the moon doesn't become a destructive free-for-all?
It starts by recognizing that the moon isn't just some celestial body ripe for exploitation. It's part of humanity's shared heritage. It's a place of wonder and scientific and cultural significance.
So we need to approach lunar exploration and resource extraction with responsibility and a long-term perspective.
Exactly. We need international agreements, that govern the use of lunar resources and ensure that they're used sustainably.
For the benefit of all humankind.
Right. And that means involving not just nations, but private companies, scientists, ethicists. Everyone needs to be part of the conversation.
So a global approach that balances economic opportunity with preservation.
Exactly.
That's a daunting challenge.
It is.
But one we absolutely have to get right. The decisions we make now, they're going to have huge consequences for the future of space exploration.
And for humanity's relationship with the cosmos.
It makes me think about that BBC reporter's experience at the Shenzhou 19 launch.
Oh, yeah.
They were talking about this palpable sense of national pride and ambition. But they also noted this tight control and secrecy surrounding the program.
Yeah, like China was inviting the world to witness their achievement, but at the same time keeping everyone at arm's length.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that their space program, like all human endeavors, is complex.
It's a mix of aspirations, motivations, and anxieties.
Yeah, a story that's still being written and one that we'll be watching closely.
For sure.
I need to absorb all this for a minute. It's incredible how much is happening in space right now and how much is at stake.
It is a remarkable time to be alive. We're seeing a new era of space exploration unfolding right in front of us.
And it's not just happening out there.
Right. It's affecting us all here on Earth.
That's a big takeaway from this deep dive. The future of space is intertwined with the future of humanity.
Our decisions, the values we prioritize, the collaborations we forge, they're going to determine the course of our journey among the stars.
As we're wrapping up this deep dive, I can't help but think back to that image from the BBC article. The sign at the launch site, warning about state secrets.
It's hard to forget that image.
It really is. It was such a stark reminder of the secrecy surrounding China's space program. And it makes you wonder, how much do we really know about their long-term goals?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It's what's fueling a lot of the anxiety in the West.
Right? Like some analysts believe China's ultimate goal is dominance in space.
Dominance militarily and economically?
Exactly. And they point to things like China developing anti-satellite weapons and their plans for lunar mining.
It's all part of the puzzle.
But then China insists that their intentions are peaceful. They talk about collaboration and benefiting humanity.
And they've been pretty consistent with that message.
They have. But there's still this opacity to their program that makes it hard to fully understand their motives.
It's like they're playing their cards close to their chest.
Exactly. And it makes me think back to what we discussed earlier about China reclaiming its historical legacy. Maybe this is about more than just rockets and satellites.
I think you're right. It's about understanding China's place in the world today.
It's a powerful symbol of their rise as a global power.
And it resonates deeply within China. Remember the article talked about the national pride surrounding the Shenzhou 19 launch?
Yeah, people were genuinely excited and inspired.
It shows that it's not just about geopolitics or economic competition.
There's a real sense of awe and wonder.
The human urge to explore, to discover, to reach for the stars.
And that brings us to a fundamental question. What is the future of space exploration?
Where are we headed?
Yeah, will it be defined by competition and rivalry, or by collaboration and shared discovery?
I think the answer lies in our ability to overcome the things that divide us.
Like political differences,
Yeah.
cultural misunderstandings, economic disparities.
Exactly. If we can find ways to work together to share knowledge and resources, then the potential is limitless.
But if we give in to fear and distrust, if power and profit take over, then we risk turning space into another battleground.
It's a choice we face, not just as nations, but as a species.
And the stakes are incredibly high. The future of space, maybe even the future of humanity, hangs in the balance.
It's a powerful thought, isn't it?
It is. So what does all of this mean for you, the listener? What can you take away from this deep dive into China's space ambitions?
Well, I hope it's made you a little bit more curious about space exploration. But more importantly, I hope it's got you thinking critically about the choices we make as we venture further into the cosmos.
It's a reminder that the future of space isn't set in stone. We're actively shaping it through our actions, our policies, and our values.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and stay curious. The journey has just begun, and it's up to all of us to determine where it leads.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into China's space program. We'll see you next time.